All right, guys. Welcome to the Tinker Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd. And today I am very grateful to have on the powerful Ricky Varandas, host of the Ripple Effect podcast and the Union of the Unwanted. Ricky has got to interview many people of various walks of life, all types of topics, alternative medicine, MMA, corruption, conspiracy, current events, philosophy, personal stories, comedy. He's interviewed all these types of people: truth seekers, researchers, independent media, scientists, sports athletes. So, Ricky, I am very grateful to have you on to have a conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I'm excited about chatting about whatever you might want to chat about.
Yeah, I really want to kind of dive into your story first off, and what got you into wanting to have all these different conversations with people. Like, what was the genesis of what got you started with the ripple effect?
Yeah, so anybody who's heard the story before, I'll try to shrink it because it's a bit of a long, not necessarily interesting, but a long story. Well, I initially started playing music. That was kind of like one of my first like true loves. I loved writing. I loved playing. I was in a band playing music as long as I can remember, and it was always like my identity. And as we got older, the band we had a lot of like other personal stories on why the band was, this member dropped out of the band or why that member was not showing up to practices or whatever. And, more or less what happened was adulthood and a lot of other issues and things that were happening in the band members' lives kept making it very hard to continue playing. And the thing when you're in a band is, or on a team in a band, hosting a podcast with other co-hosts, when you feel like you're more invested than the others, it gets to a point where it can be exhausting. And it just got to a point where I'm just like, these guys have one foot in, one foot out. I'm like all in when I do something. Anybody who knows me will tell you like I don't do anything half-ass. Mostly because I get OCD and then I just want, like, I can't stop thinking about it and I want to improve it or make it better or whatnot. And I just couldn't half-ass a band. And it just, there's, you pour your heart into music or your writing, you tap into, your own personal stories and trauma to, sing about it and hopefully share it with the world. And other people are just like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. And so it just, after a while, we broke up and life just kind of became like very repetitive, just constantly going to work and doing the same thing. And I needed to do something that was more creative, something that was kind of more fulfilling. So then I started this thing called the Theory Six music project, which was kind of just, I mean, Theory Six was, in sports, anytime I play sports, six was always my number. So it was like, okay, Theory Six is like, okay, this is my worldview. This is going to be music in the world from my perspective. And that was kind of where I came up with the term Theory Six. And then I wrote a song called the Ripple Effect Podcast, or not the Ripple Effect, I should say, that eventually turned into the theme song for the Ripple Effect Podcast. But I was writing music and I was putting out music on my own, doing everything on Pro Tools, which is this audio recording software, and learning that and learning how to write music on my own because most of my life I played guitar, a little bit of bass and vocals, but didn't really have any real expertise in drums or keys or anything like that. So it was a huge learning curve, but I enjoyed the challenge and I enjoyed doing it. But it was so time consuming. You're working full time, you're writing a song, you're starting from scratch with some lyrics and then a melody, and then you do all this work of like trying to create what you're hearing in your head in this software. And if it doesn't work out, you got to start again and be like, okay, now I got to do a new drum beat. Now I got to do a new keyboard beat. And then you have to record it all, put it all together. And it's time consuming. When you're in a band and you have like 4 or 5 members and you're in a garage, typically like the way we grew up playing, we would try something. Somebody would suggest something like, hey, let's do this part like this. So you would do it. And then you're like, okay, I either like it or don't like it. But in like seconds, you could be like, let's try it like this. And you could suggest stuff. But when you're doing it on your own, it's just like, I got to go into software, record everything on my own, and then hear it, and then find out I hate it and start fresh again. So it was just, as you could tell, it was just like very time consuming. So at the time, I just happened to also be doing like a lot of, I usually do a lot of commuting for work, but I was doing a lot of extra commuting for work. We were working exclusively almost in like just far locations that are an hour away, hour and a half away. So I was spending 2 to 4 hours in the car every day. And I honestly can't, and I've thought about this like numerous and numerous of times. I can't remember how I got into the Joe Rogan podcast, but it was like the first one I really got into. And I think it has something to do with like I was always into stand up. I was in the stand up way before I was in podcasts.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and a lot. So there's this stand up club, this comedy club nearby, about like 30, 40 minutes away called the Funny Bone in Manchester, Connecticut. They call it the Hartford Funny Bone, but it's actually in Manchester, right outside of Hartford. And we would go there. They just book some amazing stand-up comedians, and we'd always go there every other week or once a month. My wife and I would go there when we were dating, and I got her into comedy, and it was fun. We'd always, we saw some amazing people. Greg Giraldo a couple times before he passed away. He was one of my favorites. We saw Amy Schumer there. Not that she's one of my favorites, but she's a big name.
Yeah.
He was a big name that was there on a regular basis. We saw Burt Kreischer there a bunch of times. We saw Tom Segura there a bunch of times. We saw Bobby Lee. We saw um, just tons of great Jim Florentine. Just tons of great comedians. And I think I was at a Joe Rogan show where everybody was talking about his podcast. This was before I even started listening to his podcast, but we were at a comedy show. I liked Rogan because I was a big MMA guy too. I actually liked him more for his MMA stuff. His stand-up was okay, but I just liked him as a person. So we went to his stand-up and everybody's talking about his podcast. He's like, how many of you guys listen to my podcast? And like, a huge percentage of the room like raised their hands. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to check out this podcast. Everybody who's a fan of Rogan seems to be a fan of the podcast. It seems like there's more people here that are fans of the podcast and fans of his comedy or MMA stuff. So I end up listening to his podcast, got into it. Like I said, it just happened to like the stars aligned where I had time to listen to 3 hour podcasts on a regular basis.
Yeah.
A lot of commuting. And so I just got obsessed with it. And it was just like, before I got into podcasts, I was always really into documentaries and stuff like that. But kind of you're kind of limited on when you can sit down and have the time to actually go deep into a or a documentary and watch the whole thing from beginning to end. It's obviously doesn't always make sense to do it in the car. Sometimes I would do that. I would watch it, listen to a documentary in the car. And so I got into podcasts. I'm like, wow, this is kind of gives me the same type of uh benefit that I get out of watching documentaries. Like it's food for thought, it's thought provoking. I can go down some really interesting rabbit holes. And I just got obsessed with it. So, and then eventually I'm like, hey, how about I transition this Theory 6 music stuff that I'm doing and put my effort and energy into doing a podcast because it's quicker, it's more rewarding, and I've always been a social butterfly that really enjoys talking to other people and hearing their stories. So I'm like, why not give it a try? So I kind of tricked my one of my best friends, Dave, to be my co-host. He didn't really get it. He's like, why are people gonna want to listen to us talk? I'm like, well, why do we enjoy being with friends and talking all night and the time flies by and next thing you know it's 1 in the morning and we're like holy shit we've been just shooting the shit for hours at a time. Like we enjoy that. I'm like all we're doing is archiving it and sharing it with others, and the same way we enjoy being a part of those conversations, people enjoy also feeling like they're a part of those conversations by just listening to them. So that kind of what started the podcast. I had him co-host with me, and I assumed as the show grew, I could start getting bigger and more interesting guests. And initially, I've reflected on this quite a few times, where like I'm thinking like if I started the podcast today, I would never have the time to search for people's contact info like I did at the time. And like I told you before, I'm super OCD, so I would like just spend hours and hours and hours, just writing emails to every email address I can find on every website that they have ever been a part of with some type of contact page. I'd go through all their social media pages like, oh, is there a contact email? Is there something? Is there a booker or an agent? Is there something, some way I can kind of connect with this person? I would write a message on their Instagram page or Facebook page or MySpace page, whatever page they have. I would tweet them if I could, and just find creative ways of like, hey, look at me. Somebody pay attention to me. I want to talk to you. Hit me up. And it was um it was a little frustrating at first. You would spend, tons of time writing like 100 emails, maybe, you know, 15 of them are they tell you that they're too busy. Maybe one or two say that they're interested in coming on. And then it just slowly kind of started to grow. And I started getting more and more people on. And I've always liked the Rogan format because I very much like Rogan. I'm a very curious person who enjoys talking about a lot of different things. So I'm like, okay, if I have a very, very Rogan-esque type of show where I just talk to whoever, whenever, then I'm not pigeonholed and it won't feel like work because I can just say, hey, right now I'm really into this topic and I can reach out to these type of people. And then if I get bored with that, I'm like, no, well, now I want to talk to a musician or maybe now I want to talk to a athlete. I can reach out to those type of people. And if I did a history only show or a sports only show or a music only show, I feel like eventually I might get bored with it and maybe the listeners would get bored with it too. So I just really enjoyed the idea of like not putting any restrictions on who I talk to and what I talk about. And so it became really fun. I got obsessed with it. Slowly started picking up some steam in regards to getting bigger and bigger guests. And I always joke about this because I'm like, who knew that if you're nice to everybody all the time and don't talk shit, that eventually that will help out. And in regards to networking with people and making friends and having more people wanting to come on your show. And I think that was a huge help of mine was people knew I didn't really have an agenda. I would have people on like Professor Richard Wolff, who's like the leading scholar in Marxism and Karl Marx and a historian in regards to Karl Marx. And then I had a lot of libertarian friends on, right? Like, we talked about before the show about Richard Grove and others like that. And I would have people on who were in the keto diet, like Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, and then I would have other people, like Rob Wolf, who are in the paleo diet, or um, Sean Baker, Dr. Sean Baker, who's in the carnivore diet. So it's like a lot of these topics, there's like dogma and there's tribes that you're supposed to kind of be stuck in. But I think people picked up on the fact that I wasn't in a tribe and I didn't want to be in a tribe and I wanted to be kind of open-minded to everything and anything. And so I think it worked in my favor. I would email people and they would find out that I was friends with we would have some mutual friend and I was friends with somebody that they knew or whatnot, and I think it helped open the door to having more and more people on. And then eventually now, I mean, I'm not to say that the show's huge by any stretch, but it's gotten to the point where now I'm turning down a lot more people than I used to, where before I'm like constantly reaching out and now I'm like turning down a lot of shows because I still want to get people on that I enjoy talking to, and I don't want to just have people on just for clicks or just because they reached out. In quite a few cases, it's worked out where I've reached out to people with very little luck, and then out of nowhere, they'll reach out to me like they don't know me and ask to come on the show, and I'm like, oh, this is weird because I've been reaching out to you. And Dr. Robert Lusting, who has like the viral video called "The Bitter Truth." I think that's what it's called, and he was also part of the Sugar Coated documentary. He's kind of one of the leading famous doctors that really kind of highlight how dangerous the sugar industry is and all the harm they've done with health. And he was somebody that I've always been a fan of because he's been in a lot of documentaries that I'm interested in and I've loved throughout the years and couldn't get a hold of the guy. And then one day I can't remember if it was him or somebody from his team just reached out to me and they're like, hey, well, Dr. Robert Lusting has a new book. He'd love to have you or have be on your show and send you a free book and whatnot. And I'm like, that's hilarious. I've been trying to reach out to him for years. So that type of stuff happens. There's another, I'm trying to think who else. It was I can't remember. It'll come to me throughout the conversation, but there's been quite a few examples of that, which is pretty cool. And it kind of makes you feel good. It feels like, hey, now I'm like at least at the level where people appreciate their hard work and all the discussions and all the people I've had on the show. And now instead of, being somebody who has to like beg people to come on, which it did happen, and at times I did feel like I was doing that. There was a she used to be a regular on the Young Turks way back in the day. She's the host of Talk Nerdy, Cara Santa Maria. She was I remember years ago when I had her on. I would email her. She's like, "Yeah, I'm busy at the moment, but hit me up in a little bit. In another month or so. Like in a month, I'd hit her up, and then another month I hit her, and then she's like, "Okay, you're so persistent. I'm coming on." And I'm like,
You just wear it down.
yeah, and I'm like, I'm glad she said persistent and not annoying, but said she was annoying, even though she told me persistent. But yeah, I kind of felt like you had to hustle a little bit. Like people, I understood people were busy. I understood people got a lot of emails. I understood people got a lot of requests. And probably in some cases, I'm sure there's some people who never wrote me back because I annoyed him so much. And then in some cases, there's people who are like, hey, you know what? This guy's putting some serious effort in. Let me write him back, and maybe I'll come on the show. So it's yeah, things kind of came full circle, and it's been an incredibly fun journey. I mean, I've talked to people I couldn't imagine talking to, Jim Brewer, Freeway Ricky Ross, Glenn Jacobs, who's in the WWE wrestling world, is known as Kane, Undertaker's brother, somebody I grew up watching. Just John Stockton, the NBA Hall of Famer, and all-time assists, all-time steals. He was on the USA Dream Team, the famous Dream Team that there's been tons of documentaries and stories written about. Just all these amazing people that I look back, and then just the PhDs and all the experts in so many different fields, historians, that I'm just like, do they know I barely graduated high school and never stepped foot in a college ever? Um, it's fun, and it's just sometimes you get a little nervous, right? Like you get a little insecure about your ability to keep up, in a conversation with people who are intellects as a job, and experts in these topics. But in many cases, I remember talking to Jesse Ventura, and I'll share this quick story, then I'll finally shut up for a little bit. But Jesse Ventura, I finally reached out to, or finally got a hold of him, and his people the day of the show, I get an email. It was either the day before or the day of the show. I remember getting an email saying, "So these are the things Jesse Ventura wants to talk about, and here's the talking points and whatnot." And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, have you guys listened to my show? I don't do these type of interviews. It's a casual conversation. So I remember all day at work, I was like stressing about, am I going to offend him if I don't do this? Is this what people typically do? And if I don't ask these specific questions that he's ready for, is he going to be mad at me? Am I going to rub him the wrong way? So I'm just like, just stressing about it all day. Eventually, I'm like, let's just do a show the way I know how to do a show. Because if I do anything out of the ordinary, then I'm gonna suck and I'm gonna get nervous, and then he's probably never gonna come on the show anyways, again. So why not just do it my way? So I did, and instead of, he was supposed to be on for 15 to 20 minutes, I think he ended up being on for almost an hour or 40 minutes. I don't know. He was on for way longer than initially expected. He offered to come on the show again because he enjoyed himself, and I'm just like, wow, I get to, I just talked to Jesse Ventura, who at the time was very popular for his conspiracy theory. It showed that, so a lot of people in the alternative media community were huge fans of his. And, just recently I had David Icke on. So just, it's a wild ride, and weird things happen too, with podcasting, with like, during the homeopathic, I can't even talk right now, the natural remedy doctors, there's like this streak of like a bunch of them having mysterious deaths. I had one that was booked for like a Monday, and he didn't, it was a no show, no, like didn't hear from him, nothing, and couldn't get a hold of him. And then like a day or two later, I get a email from his nurse saying he passed away. And then come to find out, he ended up being one of those many doctors that were having these mysterious deaths and suicides and whatnot. I believe that they said he drowned in the lake. They don't know why he was in the lake, and you know he could swim. So how did he drown? It was like something really weird. So weird stuff like that has happened. of course, you'll also eventually get people who say that they work at Area 51 and they have some crazy story they want to share with you, and you're like doing some research on them, and you're like, I don't know if I believe this guy. This guy might,
Yeah.
so but it's fun. And then the cool thing too is like meeting other podcasters and then starting. I mean, this leads into the Union of Unwanted, where in during COVID, a bunch of us podcasters were dealing with censorship at the time. I was getting strikes and being shadow banned. I know it's kind of an overused term in the alternative media community, but definitely, some type of censorship and suppression of the show was going on, and then we came together and we're like, hey, let's talk about what we can do and share what's our research and what we think might be a way to fight back. And then when we did this, it was me, Midnight Mike, Sam Tripoli, and Charlie Robinson, and we're talking about being censored, and that's where the unwanted came from. How mainstream platforms didn't want us, and Mike said during this recording of this little swapcast of with us four that he felt like we're the Union of the Unwanted, and we're like, hey, we should keep that name, stick that somewhere because I feel like we could use that in the future. He ends up
We're the
buying the
gold, baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he ended up buying the URL during the show, and the show was kind of it was kind of like it wasn't a official show at the time. We would do these swap casts and call them the Union of Unwanted and tell everybody just kind of share it on their RSS feed or anywhere they would want because it was all open source. And then eventually, Sam and one or two of the other guys were like, "Hey, let's just make it its own show. It's kind of grown into something." So we did. We made it its own show, and so now I continue to host the Ripple Effect podcast, which I started in 2013, which is a one-on-one conversation type show. And then I co-host the Union of Unwanted, which is a roundtable discussion show. Both are fun. Both are, I think, necessary in regards to kind of giving one person time to kind of share their own story, and then also being able to sit down with different people, different backgrounds, different researchers, different outlooks, and also bouncing ideas off each other. Both are fun, and I'm not sure I like one any more than I like the other. But yeah, that's kind of the origin story of both shows.
Yeah, I like that you have all these various topics and everything, and the discussions that you have from people, and you can really tell that like you're genuinely curious about all these different things, and you're just having a real casual kind of conversation with somebody, and you get into all kinds of interesting stuff while you're talking to them. One of them that I was listening to recently was your one with Dr. Jessica Rose, and I remember you talking about how the quantum theory stuff doesn't make any sense, and you think that and it's all just kind of bullshit. And I kind of feel the same way, man, with some of the quantum stuff, where it's like, I think these guys are kind of making this up. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you're just real laid back, and you just have a good conversation with people.
Well,
So
I definitely think there is a lot of horseshit in science. The recent podcast I did with Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, who is
was she the telepathy tapes lady?
yep, the telepathy tape
That
lady.
was really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, she talked about. I was actually kind of surprised that she agreed with me, and she said it before I said it. I believe maybe it was telepathy. Who knows? Maybe she was in my brain. But she talked about how like a lot of these things are assumptions, and I have a clips channel on YouTube, and I share the clips on other platforms like TikTok and Instagram or whatnot. And then I also have I'm back reinstated on YouTube after the COVID banning, and so you can find the full episode. But the clip that I clipped from that podcast is one of the clips where she's talking about how a lot of these things are assumptions, and that's what people don't realize about science. It's like a lot of it is assumptions, a lot of it is explanations that sound scientific, but they're just explanations trying to explain the unknown, the things they don't understand. But if you have a explanation, it sounds like it's understood. They understand what they're looking at. They understand what's going on. They understand reality. They understand consciousness. They understand all these things. But the truth is, it's like anytime they get to something they don't understand, they'll just make something up. And
Yeah.
and again, I guess when you say make something up, it sounds like it's always just like from scratch. It's not necessarily always from scratch. Like sometimes it,
They have like an idea maybe, but they're trying their best to give an explanation for something that they don't truly grasp. Yeah.
yeah, and that's most of the world we live in, And speaking of amazing guests I've had in the past, and one I'm really proud to have on, a long time ago because now his research is being discussed more and more, is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who at the time when I had him on, they said that his research was pseudoscience, and if you read his Wikipedia, it probably still says pseudoscience. And now, what many experts and the consensus was that his research is pseudoscience is now being entertained in a much more serious light. And I think that's phenomenal. I think that's awesome. When I talked to David Icke, I think I had him either before or right after Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, but it was around the same time frame. And I remember either I thought about talking to him about this. It was a long podcast, so maybe I did talk to him about this. But I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, David Icke and Dr. Hennessy Powell, who is a Harvard PhD, are talking about the same things in regards to like our understanding of reality. And it's it was crazy because when you think like the one of the most fringe people through ever, and then a very mainstream person, and these roads are now crossing paths because the fringe was ahead of their time, and the fringe starts off as fringe, right? Like the first guy, I mean, regardless what you believe in regards to germ theory or whatnot, but the story is relevant. The fact that the guy who discovered germs, he used to wash his hands and before doing surgeries, and people weren't getting infections, and he figured out that there must be something that we can't see, and everybody else thought he was crazy. Like, what do you mean? Like, what's a germ? What's this, this thing so small we can't see that's getting that's causing these issues with during these surgeries. And he was considered insane. He was considered crazy, right? And so it's just one of those things where like historically there's story after story after story after story of somebody who came up with some crazy scientific breakthrough that was initially considered fringe and called crazy until it was accepted. And that's kind of, what makes us in this world so special, is that we're not afraid of being the fringe. We're not afraid of saying, I'm not sure that makes sense. Or if somebody has some crazy theory, we're okay with saying, like, you know what, that does make sense. And maybe people will call me crazy for even entertaining it, but I'm okay with that. And the world that we live in kind of is changing so quickly that you're starting to see the conversations that were nothing but fringe and only discussed in the most alternative platforms and shows are now openly discussed and openly, talked about like they were mainstream topics. So, in regards to that, I definitely do think that we've come full circle, and we should be very excited that we can question vaccines openly and publicly without getting, shit thrown at us or looked at like we're crazy. And we can question reality or consciousness or any of these things. And yeah, these topics are kind of becoming more mainstream thanks to shows like these.
Well, my background has is in engineering and mechanical engineering, and for a long time I tumbled down the rabbit hole of the alternative energy stuff and energy technologies and things like that. And ultimately, the science turns into metaphysics and the nature of reality and how what is our reality? What is the nature of this whole thing? And it led me to getting to Nassim Haramein, some of his work. I've also read Rupert Sheldrake's book Morphic Resonance, which really like those theories of how Nassim talks about how everything is connected and what Rupert Sheldrake is talking about with the kind of a shared consciousness of things and the morphic field and all that. It really makes sense to me is how whatever the reality that we're in, it's like a self-learning feedback system of uh, set forth, and there are ways that this thing operates that you can see with your with and you can test out and see how things operate. But yeah, his work is real fascinating, and David Icke as well, talking about how, you know, yeah, I really think it's our perception, it's the control of our perception, which is the thing that kind of holds a lot of us down and keeps us kind of tied in the box of only thinking that the authorities can tell you what reality is instead of you thinking. I've been told sometimes that my mind is so so open, it's just gonna fall out or something like that. But it's like, you better watch out there, buddy. But I like that. I like you, like yourself, just being curious about things and wanting to go down rabbit holes and wanting to know more. Like, I think you guys talked about, there is a bit of a curse of being so curious, because I wish I could not see some of these things and realize that, the world is the way it is. It would be easier to take the blue pill and maybe live a little bit comfortably and just kind of live the life a little bit nicer. But do you ever? Yeah, I know you guys talked about that, but yeah, it's I have to know. It's just one of those things where I have to know. I have to go and look into some stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it does feel like ignorance could be bliss, like just enjoying a sports game, knowing that there's no, or assuming there's no fixing and there's no corruption, enjoying um, wrestling, and almost putting aside that it's all theater. It's like, yeah, I mean, I feel like you could enjoy these things a little bit more if you could suspend your curiosity for a little bit and kind of, instead of pulling the curtain back, maybe pull the curtain forward and say, hey, you know what? I don't need to see what's going on behind the scenes. But I don't know. I don't think many of us are built that way. Many of us that do these type of things. I just think I'd rather know, and maybe it ruins a couple of things that I would enjoy. But I'd rather know than not know. And I've used this metaphor many times on the show. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm just trying to gather as many puzzle pieces as possible, hoping that by the end of my journey, I can grasp somewhat what the image is that I'm gathering pieces for, and what the image of the puzzle is. And I think that's kind of what we all inherently want to do. I think sometimes we get tricked into, or tricked, or I think that some of us are just more comfortable if we just don't know, right? And
Yeah,
I I think comfort is one of those things where it makes life a little easier to live if you're not, always questioning these things and wondering who really pulls the strings and what's really going on. But it's like, even recently with like the Jeffrey Epstein thing, like I just
why is
can't.
everybody talking about this FC guy? What's going on there? Yeah.
It just I'm like so curious on what is going on. Like, and I don't even know how to state it, because it's like, okay, either Trump was always a part of the plan, or he wasn't a part of the plan, and now they have him by the balls one way or another, either with like blackmail or threats or something. But
Yeah.
to spark all these discussions when you're running about, like, I'm gonna, we're gonna investigate 9/11 again. We're gonna investigate, Epstein. We're gonna, like, why even say any of these things if he's a part of the plan? Like, I don't, and why even after he won, right? Because that was the other thing too. It's like, I get it if you're like, okay, you want our vote, and then now that you got what you want, you do what all politicians do and just, like, you know, lie to us and say, "Oops, I couldn't do it." But the fact that he continued to talk about these things like he had serious interest in uncovering these things, and then all of a sudden, just a complete 360 is,
Yeah, that was really weird.
it's weird. And it's just like, I mean, I thought that he was such a loose cannon that you couldn't even really control him. He would just accidentally slip and say something. But the fact that he's like sticking to the script where he's telling people to stop thinking about it. He's telling people to stop talking about it. It just really is scary to think that you could put that much pressure on somebody to just follow the script and make something go away. And even when it's somebody who's so drastically, so deeply, I should say, wants the public to like them and wants his base to like him. And now he's doing something that he knows is going to tear the base apart. And yet he's doing it almost like he has to, like he has no other option. And so, I mean, it's kind of what we assumed. We assumed that like maybe even if somebody who had somewhat good intentions, like a Ron Paul or whoever, or a Jesse Ventura got into office, the deep state wouldn't let them actually do anything. It would be like, hey, you know, you could, I'm glad that you won, but we'll kill your kids. We'll expose some video of you doing some shit. We'll take every skeleton out of your closet and expose it. And if you don't follow the rules, or we'll kill you, and like that Bill Hicks joke, they show you.
Yeah, was it Bill Hicks? I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Bill Hicks who talked about how he thinks when you become president, they bring you into a secret room and they show you a angle of the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
Shows that he was assassinated by the government, by the CIA, by his own people. And then they ask, "Hey, do you have any questions?" And I mean, I don't think that that's too far-fetched because when you look at like the 360 of the rhetoric, it's just insane. And not just him, it's just like everybody, all his friends, everybody's connected to him, or all these people who, Dan Bongino, who's been on and on, talking about the Jeffrey Epstein list, trying to expose things. All of a sudden, it's like, no, nothing to see here. Cash Patel, when he went on Joe Rogan, the fact that Joe Rogan was beating him in a debate on this topic that he investigated and is basically saying like, hey, like, I know you're saying he committed suicide, but how about the cameras? How about the the cellmates that were supposed to be in there because he was on suicide watch? How come the person who said that it looked like he was or well, I forget what the name of the doctor was that did the autopsy or the independent autopsy, saying that it couldn't have been a suicide, like all these weird things, and he just didn't have it. He's like, oh, I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm like, motherfucker, that's your job. That's why you're on this show. That's what like you were hired for. You should have already looked into it. The fact that you haven't looked into it means somebody doesn't want you to look into it, or you're just lying out of your ass to try to cover something up, but something more is going on. And it just, it's nuts. It's nuts that they think that we're so dumb that you can just go on TV and say there's nothing to see here. Yeah, I know all these things don't make sense, and there's all these links to Mossad and there's all the that uh we're letting Israel go buck wild on the rest of the world, and we're just okay with it. Um, but the truth is like there's nothing here. Just move on. Let's talk about food dyes and let's talk about tax cuts and tariffs, but all this scary dark shit, it doesn't exist. Don't worry about it. And it's crazy. It's crazy that in some way it's kind of working. People are kind of moving on from the topic, and I'm like, no, we got to like make somebody accountable because somebody.
Keep pressing on it. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a cover up going on right before I just like when Epstein got arrested, we're all like, he's not gonna leave prison, like he's not gonna survive this. And then when they're like, hey, he committed suicide, move on, and we're like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way he committed suicide. So it just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's your thoughts on? Are you sick of hearing about it, or do you feel like we need to keep talking about it?
No, I think we should keep talking about it, and I think I've always wondered how we get more of this good information out to people. And you talked about you like comedy earlier and like to go to see stand up and stuff like that. And I really feel like comedy is one of those ways that it softens the blow to a lot of people about some of this stuff. Like you can get the information out there, and the memes I think are great. Like use the mimetic information to put that out there to get people to look a little deeper into something. but there has to be something that kind of softens the blow for some people for some of this heavy information, because it is, for most people that just are living out their lives and trying to do their thing day to day and make it. And when you want to when you present some of this information to them, how basically this whole thing is a criminal enterprise mafia system, and you are, your whole life has been a lie, and the these guys are not good, they're really evil, that that can be really heavy. And you know your food system's messed up, your medicine's messed up, all these things are messed up. So I think it really, one of the angles is finding a way to soften the blow, and you know keep talking about these subjects. And if you can get somebody to laugh a little bit about the absurdity of this craziness that we live in, that maybe that'll open up people to looking into it deeper. But it's quite a battle, man. I don't know what the percentage of people are that, I know it's very small, the number of people that are in uh to diving deep and seeking truth. It's got to be in the thousands. I don't know. I've been to a lot of the different conferences and stuff like that. Um freedom conferences, and uh like self-reliance, do the self-reliance festival thing. And um just just meeting the people through those things and some of these events, it still seems like we're a very small minority in comparison to the rest of the population.
We are, but I think there's a lot of people in the mainstream world that are now entertaining these topics that were fringe and enter
Candace Owens has been talking about a lot of this stuff. Some of the stuff that Owens has put out there has been like, wow, she must be listening to like Richard Grove or something, man.
yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I've actually really liked her, her solo work. She's done a great job with exposing the prime minister's transvestite well,
Yeah, Macron.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that, I think she did a great job exposing that. She's not afraid. She really is like the female Alex Jones in regards to she's not afraid to say something that might look crazy at first, because now people are finally entertaining the fact that, like, yeah, that might be a dude. And I,
Yeah.
no, I
Yeah. Very compelling. All the evidence she put together on that.
there's no pictures of this girl as a young girl. Like he
Yeah.
does. I mean, how do you not have any pictures whatsoever in any of the
Jean Michel Trogneau. Yeah.
and she did a great job. She did a long episode or just series of episodes on the topic and really nailed it. She's doing one now on Epstein. You look at Tucker Carlson, he's another one that I know, and I know a lot of people in our alternative media community are like, fuck those guys. They weren't, and it's like, I don't like that. To me, it's like they're on our team now. He just had Marty Cooper, what's his last name? Is it Marty Cooper from Marty Made podcast? He just had him on, did like a 2.5 hour deep dive into the history of Jeffrey Epstein on the Tucker podcast. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's information overload almost. Uh,
I'll have to check that one out. I haven't
Really,
heard that
really
one yet.
good. I mean, Marty just goes really deep into all his ties and how he came out of nowhere and how he got his initial job and funding and all this stuff, and it's phenomenal. And so yeah, I mean, I think that we have to build bridges, not burn them. I think whenever somebody is ready to start having these discussions, even if they were wrong for a long period of time, or we think that they were wrong on certain topics, like we got to be open arms because they're on our team, and we can't be burning bridges with people on our team because, like you said, we are somewhat a minority, and if we're if there's strength in numbers, then we should be opening our arms to these people and bringing them in and saying, yes, like, I'm glad you're talking about the things that we've been talking about. And yeah, people like Candace, Russell Brand, Tucker, all people that Steve from AM Wake Up hates, but but they're all, and I disagree with him all the time on this topic because of this. It's like, oh, but they were, and I'm like, I don't need credit for like, oh, well, yeah, I've been talking about vaccines way before COVID. It was always a topic that I was very passionate about. It was one of the first conspiracy theories that I thought was like neglected. That I'm like, why aren't more people talking about this? Like we're
Yeah, what took you down that rabbit hole? Because, like, yeah, I started to read some stuff about that running across like Forrest Moretti, and I read like The Moth in the Iron Lung because I had a conversation with somebody about polio, and I was like, well, I don't really know enough about polio, so I'm gonna go look at some information. What got you into that?
Well, I kind of saw it the same way as like cancer cures. Like when I was looking for like controversial documentaries and conspiratorial documentaries, because one thing I would find in these conspiratorial documentaries is a lot of truth, a lot of things that were like, you'd watch a documentary like, okay, this seems a little crazy, but let me watch it. Let's see. And then you find out like, holy shit, like there's some serious research in this and there's some serious breadcrumbs of truth in this. And when you start doing your own research, you're like, wait, that doctor does exist. And that doctor was curing cancer. And and the story that's in this documentary does seem to be true. And then you find out there's more evidence of doctors curing cancer. And, with vaccines, it's kind of the same thing. Like I, ran into it. I don't remember whose work it was initially, but I'm just like, wow, we're all brainwashed to believe that vaccines are safe and effective. We repeat that line over and over again. And to me, it was so crazy to think that something that nobody questions whatsoever is just a giant psyop. It's like one of the big. So to me, like what drew me into that topic was like how passionately people were about both sides. There's only extreme views. There were no moderate views. It was either like
Yeah,
we're extremely like without a doubt they're poison, they're dangerous, don't touch them. And then the other, point of view was they're all crazy. There's no evidence that they cause any autism. There's no evidence they're harmful. There's no and everybody just so accepting of it and so accepting of it that they're not even questioning the vaccines they're giving their kids, newborns, the most precious thing that you'll ever, deal with. Your own child, your own flesh and blood. You're okay with them shooting up these vaccines because you've been so brainwashed that you don't even question it. You don't even ask. You don't even ask a question of like, should I be doing this? Is this even necessary? So to me, it was like so just mind blowing how brainwashed people were because I'm like, wait, there does seem to be evidence that these could be harmful, at least to some people, to some portion of the population. But yeah, you talk to anybody who is pro-vaccine, they don't. They're so brainwashed they won't even entertain the discussion that there could be any negative effects of it. So to me, it was like, holy shit! Like I've seen war propaganda, I've seen geopolitical propaganda, but like the propaganda in vaccines was just like so strong that there was no moderates. There was only either you saw through the propaganda and you realize that everybody's been brainwashed on the topic, or you're the brainwashed group. There was no middle ground. And then when you think about what it means, like, so if we accept the fact that they could be harmful, we're knowingly causing autism in some kids. We're knowingly taking some kids' ability from ever living a normal life by giving them something that is, scientifically, can't possibly be safe and effective for everybody because that doesn't even make any scientific sense. Like the example I always use on the show, and some people love it, some people hate it, but is the peanut butter example, is the idea of like, think about how harmless people look at peanut butter, right? Since the beginning of peanut butter, nobody looked at peanut butter like it was a harmful substance. But if I mandated peanut butter for every newborn, some kids are going to die. So you're telling me that vaccines are safer than peanut butter because if I give every kid peanut butter, some kids are going to have some reactions to it, some negative reactions, possibly some deaths. But yet vaccines are safer than that because you're telling me I can give every kid a vaccine and they're all going to be okay.
no one will have any side effects whatsoever.
There
Yeah.
is no substance on the planet that if you give everybody, you mandate everybody will have the exact same response. Like it just that's super unscientific to even say. And then when you look at things like the history of thimerosal and the fact that they for a long time they told you there was no harm in it, and then come to find out RFK and other attorneys proved that it was unsafe and that it was put in these vaccines for a immune response because they're like, hey, look, the vaccine's working. Look at the immune response. But the truth was, your immune response was to the mercury poison that you're putting into your body. And so it's like, and then you look at the fact that the vaccine courts, how many people didn't even know about the story of the fact that vaccine makers were losing money because they're getting sued so often, and eventually went to the government and said, hey, we can't profit off vaccines. You got to remove all liability, or we're going to stop making them. So the government created a vaccine court, removed all liability, and then when that happened, you start seeing this drastic increase of vaccines in the vaccine schedule. And every vaccine that is added to the CDC recommendation is paid by the government. So you look at it, the government pays for the lawsuit if they get sued in the vaccine courts. And when it's put on the vaccine schedule, the government is also paying Big Pharma for the vaccine. So you can get it for free, but you're actually paying for it through your taxes. So, and then if you get harmed, their your tax money is how they pay you for the losses. So big pharma has no liability, hands off. So what incentive do they have to put out a safe and effective product? They don't. They've lost all incentive. So like, and people don't even know this, and they don't know that the vaccine courts have given out millions of dollars, and that it's very hard to prove that a vaccine was related to whatever harmful, negative effect your child had, because obviously the most most doctors will say it wasn't related. Most pediatricians will tell you you're crazy, that you just didn't notice that your kid is, cognitively declining out of nowhere. And so, yeah, so it just, to me, it was so obvious. So the fact that this was like a giant psyop and there's all this evidence of it, and you could find all these documentaries that went into the history of it, and everybody else was just like, no, you're crazy. And you
Yeah.
felt crazy. I mean, vaccines were one of those topics.
I I felt like that anytime I would mention or question it, yeah, in conversations with people. It made me feel like, oh, you're one of those anti-vaxxer guys, huh?
And I was for a long time. I was the guy who like got a lot of shit. And just recently, not that recently, but like a month or so ago, I got together with some buddies I haven't seen in a while, and one of my buddies, Ben, was like, "We got to make sure to say Ricky was right," because he was one of those guys that looked at me like I was crazy in regards to vaccines during the beginning of COVID. He thought I was a little crazy, and now looking back, he's like, "Dude, you were kind of right about." I mean, not to say that I was right about everything. I mean, I'm wrong about shit all the time. But I think it wasn't hard to see that there's a profit motive in all this, and there was a eugenics motive in all this, and that there was that we're being lied to about all this stuff. I mean, they had Event 201, which I remember showing my wife like right in the beginning of lockdowns, and she couldn't believe that Event 201 was put together before COVID, because what was going on TV was exactly what Event 201 thought was going to happen on TV. And the reactions of the people and the public and the governments and pharmaceuticals by force feeding you a vaccine was exactly how they predicted it was going to happen in Event 201. And who was involved? The World Economic Forum, which now has become a household name, thank God, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and John Hopkins. And it just, and then I remember even questioning Bill Gates for a long time. People would look at me like I was crazy. Like, oh, he's trying to help people. I'm like, there's literally clips of him talking about overpopulation. And then
Right.
you can find another interview where he's talking about wanting to vaccinate all of Africa. So it's like, do you not do you not see the issue here? Like, do you think there's too many people in the world, but you're trying to prevent the spread of disease by vaccinating people, which will help with increasing the population? So maybe his true incentive is to depopulate the world, not to help populate the world. So it was like so many things that just seemed like, hey, dude, how am I seeing this and you're not? Like it was, you did feel, you felt like somebody in the sane asylum that was like, "Hey, I'm not crazy," and everybody's like, "No, you really are," and you're like, "No, no, I'm not. I'm telling you, I'm not crazy." But what's the first thing a crazy person says? Is I'm not crazy. So it's like, how do you say that without sounding like a crazy person? It was difficult, but we talked about this on Monday. We had a Union of the Unwanted, and we pre-recorded it because it was like put together last second or whatnot. But one of the things you'll hear us discuss is the fact that one of the wins that we can be kind of excited about is the fact that all these things that literally were things that we had to like convince people like, hey, I'm not crazy, hear me out, are now discussed in a public manner. And
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing if there's any good trends that we can see.
that's why I think it is important to keep getting and having the conversations with people, like you said, that are on the fringe at some point, like that. It's good to our world is like created through ideas, and if those conversations stop, then there's nothing to push back against the main narrative that's getting shoved on people. So I can't remember who talked about it, but it may have been like Matthias Desmet or something like that. That was talking about mass formation psychosis, but I think he was talking about how if you lose like dissident voices, then basically all there is the mass fervor just riles up and goes in this one direction, and it can take just a very passionate leader or something like that to kind of lead them all in one direction. So I think it's like really important to get that information out there. And anytime that somebody's over the target when you get your channel taken out or whatever, that you're like, okay, you just Streisand affected whoever that was, for I think, and I think that's where the people that are seeking the truth and attempting to get information out there, that you just have to keep going and just try to get better and try to reach more people because like you said, I've had friends that I would consider normies that are having children now that are attempting to not give their kids any vaccines. So, and they've started to think about this stuff. So, um, I think there's some signs that things are shifting a little bit, but I think it's just important to keep on keeping on.
The Rogan show, because he was on a regular basis throughout COVID, you could see and hear his transitioning to his worldview, like it transitioning to realizing that this was all horseshit. I mean, I remember one of the most frustrating topics to listen to Joe Rogan talk about was vaccines because I knew how wrong he was. And I'm just like, dude, this guy, he's so open-minded with some topics, but I'm like, he is just, drinking the Kool-Aid in regards to this one topic. I remember having Del Bigtree on a bunch, and one of the appearances he was on the Ripple Effect podcast. I'm like, Del, how the hell we get you on Rogan? Because I knew like, okay, he's someone who is real deep in this topic, could really debate it and hopefully change his mind. And he's like, fuck Joe Rogan. He's like literally his exact words were like, fuck Joe Rogan. He's like, he's a coward. He's like, because I mentioned to Dell, I'm like, get RFK on the show. And he's like, we've reached out to him. Our people have reached out to his people. He won't have us on, this and that. And it was frustrating because he would have, I mean, it'd be okay if he was just like, hey, I'm neutral on the topic until I learn more. I'm not going to have anybody on. But then he would have people on like Dr. Hotez, who's just a piece of crap.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
yeah.
that's the part. It's like if you don't want to touch the topic, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you saying, "Hey, I don't know. I don't want to touch the topic. It's not my expertise, or it's not a topic I want to dive deep into, or whatever." That's fine. But when you have a promoter of pharma on and bad science and dangerous vaccines, and then yet you won't have somebody who is his counterpart who can argue the bullshit points he's making, then I kind of have a problem with that, especially when you consider yourself open-minded and curious. And And the thing is with me, what was frustrating is like he saw with like Graham Hancock and other people, anybody who kind of went against the mainstream narratives, like got a lot of pushback. So, but yet when we talked about vaccines, anybody who's going against the mainstream narrative, he like didn't understand it was the same powers. It was the same motives that it was like, hey, we don't want people uncovering anything. We want to control the information. We control the information. We control the people. And anybody who goes against the grain, we're just gonna say that they're pseudoscience crazy people. And I'm like, how do you not see the parallels? How do you not see the similarities between all these stories and all these researchers? And but yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, last time James Corbett was on my show, and he was one of the first guests on my show in like 2013 or whenever it was. I remember, him and I were like talking about fringe things uh, in alternative media with other fringe people and topics that anybody who's a normie would consider fringe topics. And now he's being interviewed on Dr. Drew, and he's being interviewed on, on regular
Oh
shows.
wow, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
he was on Dr. Drew. He was on Jimmy Dore. He was on, I had Jimmy Dore on years ago too, before he became a huge hit, and that's why he won't return my emails now. But it's okay. He's probably super busy. I mean, obviously the show is huge, but I did have Jimmy Dore on. I had Dave Rubin on before he became a huge hit. This was like right after he left TYT, and so yeah, I mean, but it was just one of those things where like these topics that I remember. I mean, even just bring up Jimmy Dore. Like I remember when I had him on, I was like hesitant to bring up certain topics because I'm like, oh, he doesn't really go this deep into these topics. I don't know. I don't want him to think I'm a crazy person, you know. So it was like I know he likes to talk about geopolitical stuff and comedy. I'm like maybe I'll just keep it simple. I typically if this conversation led somewhere, I didn't stray away from it too much. But it was one of those things where some of these topics, especially vaccines, were so fringe that you're like, if it gets brought up, I'm like, I hope it kind of doesn't get brought up because I want them to like me and I want them to come back on and I want them to respect my opinion. And if I lose the respect right from the get-go because we start talking about vaccines, I'm like, I I might not be able to have this discussion as like equals in regards to like sharing ideas and whatnot. So it's just we've come a long way, and I think that uh I forget what your question was now, but I do think one thing that a lot of people in our media and in our world wasn't doing was talking about vaccines. It like Del Bigtree obviously made his life's work about this topic, RFK, but I talked about it a lot. I had a lot of alternative doctors on really early, but it wasn't until COVID that people like, you know, Ryan from The Last American Vagabond, Jason Burmis, a lot of other, big names, Alex Jones talked about it on a regular basis and really help uncover like the psyop. Rogan, that's right, we were talking about Rogan. Rogan, you could see him slowly evolve. There's like little hints of him evolving. Like I remember when he was talking to Dr. Hotez about the Lyme disease vaccine and how he's like, oh yeah, it was because of all the conspiracy theorists that said it was dangerous. That's why they had to take it off the market. And Rogan's like, no, I know somebody who got Lyme disease from the Lyme disease vaccine, and that's why they took it off the market because people were getting. He's like, no, that's not true. And he's like, no, it is. Cause he's like, I know somebody who got Lyme disease from and they were getting, and I'm like, okay, he's seeing that he's full of shit. He's figured out that like, hey, this guy's kind of full of shit. And he's just so pro vaccine that he can't ever, admit that any of them could be harmful. So you could see little hints. And I remember I would listen to Rogan waiting for little hints. I remember one time he would talk about RFK's book but he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't name it. He would be like, "Yeah, I'm kind of in a book that's making me question like the history of polio and what." And I'm like, "Wait, is he reading RFK's book?" And so you could see this transition. And some people in our personal lives, that's what it takes. It takes like a bunch of little baby steps to just add up. And that's kind of why I called the show the Ripple Effect. And I loved the name so much was because I'm like, we're all starting a ripple, and I might expose somebody to some new ideas that they might resist initially, and then they might run into your show, and you might do the same, and they run into, Scott Armstrong and Rebunked, and or Grand Theft World, or Charlie Robinson, or Sam Tripoli, and little by little, we're like kind of cracking at that mainstream narrative, and eventually we don't know which show or which conversation or which piece of information does it, but one of us will break through that crack and they'll finally see the light, for lack of a better term. And so I think we're all contributing to that. And so it does piss me off when mainstream people that you like don't see the light more, sooner or quick enough or as soon as you do. But I'm always for having them on our team. I think Russell Brand is doing more good than bad. I think Rogan's doing more good than bad. I think Candace Owens, Tucker are doing way more good than bad in regards to just exposing these type of topics to their huge and majority normie audience.
I think they're listening to like a lot of these guys. I think they're listening to you guys that have been doing it for a long time. Like I know Kurt Metzger gets a lot of his stuff from Richard Grove. He talks about it. That Richard Grove is his rabbi, but him on Jimmy Dore, laying information down and all this stuff that he talks to, like some of these bigger audience people are talking about these things now, and like you said, it is. I think it's good.
Have you seen the Kurt Metzger interview on the Jesse Michaels show? You know Jesse Michaels?
Jesse Michaels? No,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. I haven't seen that yet.
Jesse Michaels, he's kind of a younger guy, but he has a great show that he talks to a lot of people about anti-gravity and like consciousness and UFOs and this type of stuff. And he just did a podcast with another YouTuber that talks on that discusses the topic, but also had Kurt Metzger on that same episode. And they went
No way.
yeah, and it was fun. And Kurt like went really deep. And it's funny, he even butt heads with Jesse Michaels a few times because Kurt's like, making fun of him for not like seeing the conspiracy or not quite understanding it or buying into it. And so it's fascinating. But Kurt, like that episode really highlights how much he knows because he went down some really, you know, uh crazy rabbit holes and really connected some dots for people that maybe were kind of new to the topics. And so when you hear Kurt like rift and you get, the opportunity to just really hear him go down these rabbit holes, it's amazing how much he knows. And Richard Grove's like that too. I mean, Richard Grove, I've been lucky enough to uh, become friends with Richard Grove and know him personally. I've spent time with his family. I've spent time with him, and in 2019 when the Red Pill Expo was in Hartford, which is a conference that G. Edward Griffin puts together. Richard was kind enough to invite me, and I got to meet a lot of people and hang out with a lot of people, and yeah, and it was Richard's always been just a ball of knowledge. One of my favorite documentaries of all time is written by Richard Grove and narrated by his wife, called "State of Mind: The Psychology of Control."
Yeah.
Yeah, great documentary by Free Mind Films, who also did some amazing work with the OKC bombing, and I forget what other documentary they did. Did one with Kevin Sorbo narrating. I forget what that was called, but Ben Swan was in it and a bunch of other people. But Richard's like phenomenal. I mean, you hear him talk, and it just like he could. I mean, the Peace Revolution podcast he did back in the day was a podcast only somebody like Richard, who has crazy OCD and is a perfectionist, could do. I mean, it's hours and hours and hours and hours of archived clips put together on specific topics, really exposing the fact that a lot of these conspiracies, the truth is right in front of you if you just connect the dots and whatnot. And Richard does that. And I mean, it kind of reminds me of like 9/11 with Press for Truth is one of the best 9/11 documentaries because it's not a conspiracy documentary. It's literally the four widows who basically forced the commission report and really came to the conclusion that there was a cover up going on. But they kind of uncovered everything the same way that many of us uncover things. And that's like they ran into a website that had all these clippings and all these pieces of conspiracies and evidence that there's something more than meets the eye, and somebody just put it all in a timeline, and these widows looked at it and they're like, holy crap, like that, maybe that can be a coincidence, but if you add that with that and you have that and that and that, like it can't all be a coincidence. And it kind of opened their eyes to what was really going on. And I think many of us uncover things in the same way and the same pattern, where we just gathered some information that, like, okay, I don't know what this means, I don't know why it's important, I don't know if it's even significant, but I'm going to hold on to this, I'm just going to store it in my brain. And then you like find something else, then you find something else, then you find something, and then all of a sudden they become dots on a board, and you start connecting those dots, and you're like, oh shit, it's starting to make sense now. So yeah, I think we need people like Richard, who has the historical just archives of information in his head, and physical archives because he collects crazy books, and uh, to be able to connect those dots for you. And I think we get to a point where, like, once you connect enough dots, like, you can't unsee what you've seen, and you live in a world, kind of to bring it back to what we talked about in the beginning of the show. You get to a point where you're just like, how do I unsee this, or how do I temporarily unsee it, just so I can enjoy life for a little bit? And because I've gotten in those holes where I'm just like, dude, everything seems so insignificant and not important, because it's like, how do I go on pretending this job matters? How do I go on pretending that money has value? How do I go on and pretend that we're not all being killed and poisoned by big pharma and big food? How do I go on like ignoring all that, and without letting it ruin your day and ruin your outlook and ruin your mood? But you also have to remind yourself that, like, hey, there's beautiful things about life, and it only affects you if you let it affect you. And if you let it affect you, they kind of win, like, in
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've gone on that journey myself. Like, I really fell into kind of a dark place myself for a while there, and felt like, I was all alone, kind of on my own, and knowing all this information, and was real angry at a lot of people for a while. And then I realized, like, it's about our connections with people. At least for me, it was like I was really trying to lone wolf stuff, almost going Uncle Ted, going off grid, and like just wanted to like leave society in total. And number one, I realized I kind of had a Dunning Kruger effect going on with myself, because I did not have the skills required to totally live off grid. And then two, I realized that even though I am more of a person that is fine being alone, that there is a real yearning in myself for having a social connection with people. And so, yeah, I, especially during COVID, started up a small Freedom Cell group with the work of John Bush, Derek Bros. They put together the Freedom Cell thing. And with one of my buddies that I met at Anarchapulco in 2020, we started this small Freedom Cell group in our area. And we get together on a regular basis. It's still maintained, but that has made a huge difference. And then also some of the conferences that I've been to, where I used to be a lot heavier guy. Like, I was like 320 pounds. And I started to learn, like, you can focus on the negative all the time, but like it can lead you to further going down a dark place. But you have to, take on challenges and overcome them in order to grow as a person. And just getting the social aspect and the fitness aspect starting to roll really has changed my direction. I was pretty dark place there for a while, thinking that, what's the point? And the social aspect and getting my fitness, working on myself, got me out of that. And like knowing that, yeah, life, there's a lot of good for life. It's about kind of a lot about your own perception, and like, what can you do, right? Like, you have to focus on what you can do and make that the focus.
Yeah, that's why one of my favorite quotes is, if you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes. And you can look at any journey in life as a negative or a positive. You can see it as a challenge, or as a failure. You can, that's we've all done it, right? And they say like the difference between a winner and a loser is that the winner never gave up, right? I mean, we all lose. We all have failures. We all have self-doubt. I mean, even when podcasting, the difference between my show and your show is that I kept doing it, right? And I just kept, and so it's like your show can easily be my show. Like you can get the same guest, you just got to keep going at it. Just keep doing it. Keep emailing people even when they're not responding because they want you to stop emailing them. Uh,
Yeah.
keep keep finding creative ways to contact people. Keep just doing it, and eventually luck and hard work will cross paths. And that's the thing that's I think is an important message to people is that there there is luck in a lot of things in life, but that luck will never come if you don't put in some hard work and you don't keep trying. And it's like viral videos. Like you'll never have a viral video if you don't keep posting videos, right? If I say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna have a viral video, so I'm just not gonna post anything, or I just say, hey, I'm gonna keep posting, and the only way I'm ever gonna have a viral video, if that's what you're looking for, is to keep posting videos and hoping that something catches the algorithm, wave and whatnot. So it's like that's kind of much of life is just like, hey, if you love something, do it because you love it and continue doing it because you love it, and then the success will come afterwards. And in my case, like success isn't really financial. It's more just the success of being able to like reflect on life and say, hey, I got to talk to a bunch of really cool people and people that I would have never, ever, ever imagined I could have them sit down and talk to me for more than 10 seconds. I mean, the fact that like, I had John Stockton on twice. The second time I had him on soon after my kids wanted to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's been a while since they went. It was, and they change it from time to time. And they were real little and not even really into basketball at the time when they went. So they wanted to go enjoy it now as a little older children who would know more of the players in the Hall of Fame and whatnot. So we went, and there was like this one little part of the Hall of Fame that was like a tribute to John Stockton, and uh, and so I took a picture of the kids next to like it has his jersey, his shoes, all this stuff. And and then I'm like, hey, I'm gonna email this to John Stockton and let him know that, we came here and we thought about him and the kids thought it was cool that he has his own little area of the Hall of Fame and he was just on the podcast. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm taking a picture of my kids next to some stuff, some historical stuff related to John Stockton at the Hall of Fame, and I actually have John Stockton's contact info that I can email him the picture and say, "Hey, John, just thought, was thinking of you. Thought it'd be cool if I, send you this picture." And I'm like, "This is fucking crazy." I'm like, "That's like having like, when people say who's the most famous person in your phone." I mean, before I started the podcast, there was nobody famous in my phone. Now I could say like I actually have phone numbers and email addresses of like somewhat famous people. And it's just like, how the fuck did I get here? Well, I just never gave up. I never, and again, like I said before, like the dirty little secret is like, yeah, if you're nice to people, eventually being nice does pay off. Nice guys do finish last for much of the race. But if you never give up and you never stop being yourself and you never stop being, a good person who actually cares about, uh, you know, listening and understanding others, sometimes nice people do finish first, and your good deeds and your good energy that you put out in the universe does come back and pay off. And again, like I'm not successful to the point where like, hey, I'm not even doing the show full time. I mean, I haven't even got to that point yet, but I've never really cared that much. I'm always thinking like, hey, eventually that day will come where maybe I'll be fucking 50 when I'm like my podcast like blows up and I'll be that guy like, holy shit, I've been doing it since I was, in my 20s and now I'm 50 and I, finally blew up and I'm doing this full time. But I don't even know if I would want to be that big. I mean, I think about going on vacations with the family. We were in Cape Cod not that long ago. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if somebody recognized me. And then I'm like, having dinner with my family and at a table, and I'm thinking, it's cool that nobody recognizes me because I just want to have
Yeah.
something fine. And I just,
Yeah, yeah, it can be both like a blessing and a curse in a way, yeah.
yeah. So but yeah, but I mean, I guess, and the pros and cons of technology. I mean, how awesome is it that like we both get to reach out to people and have these amazing conversations and share with the world and archive it forever. One day will be nothing but ashes, or I mean, or maybe we won't be. Who knows what happens in the afterlife? But our conversations are going to be here forever, and one day, way after I'm gone, my kids, my friends, my family members, people who live beyond my years will be able to go back and like see evidence of who I was and what I thought and how I felt and how I talked to people and my perspectives on the world. And I think that's like one of the coolest things ever, to think that like, I mean, even my son who's 10 now, to think that like he could literally go back and listen. He could listen to me having conversations about the experience of becoming a father, of being having a newborn, of taking care of a newborn, of all these experiences that I'm like, I couldn't even imagine going back in a time machine and watching my father become a father. Like, did he want to be a father? Did he like kids? Was it accidental? Was it thought out? Was he enjoying it? Was I a tough kid? Did I make his life hard? Did I make him second guess? Like all these things that like, I have archived for my children that they can go back and listen to me talk and discuss these things. I mean, it's pretty wild. But and then of course, that's the pros of technology. The cons are I can talk to my phone and AI will tell me how to, I literally just, this is a true story. I literally just had a problem with uh the toilet in one of our bathrooms. And I'm like, what's broken? And what do you call this part? Like, I think it's this part. I need to fix it. I don't know what to call it. Let me go to Gemini. Gemini, here you are. Stare at my toilet. Let me know what this part's called so I can order it. And the next thing you know, it's telling me how to fix my toilet. And I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Until like I'm talking to Gemini for like personal therapist questions and answers and I forget that it's not real and it doesn't really have any ability to be creative or love or imagination. It's literally just fed this stuff from other humans. Um, but we can get lost in the, the
Con
theater. We can get lost in storyline.
and the convenience of things, right? Like, once something becomes convenient, people start to adopt it, and it becomes part of your life, and then you kind of, I guess, export some of your thinking and with the AI specifically,
Well,
is
we
that
look,
you're exporting some of your own thought to now the AI is kind of taking it over.
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just saying it's human tendency to look for the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why this stuff is so. It seems pretty dangerous because if we're not aware of how easily we can be sucked into something, that it could kind of, like I said, take over our thinking.
Yeah, I mean, are we influencing it or is it influencing us, right? Like it's perspective on the world, it's answers it gives to us, it's suggestions to how to handle things. Like, I mean, when do we know when the pendulum's swaying and now it's influencing our decision making and our worldview? And yeah, that's kind of scary. I mean, we on the last You've Done Wanted on Monday, we were talking about AI and Graham from Grime America was talking about how he thinks there's some positive things with it. And many of us on the show were just like, even if there are some positive things, I am scared shitless because none of this stuff is even necessary. Like, if we lived 10 years ago, or if we lived in a time where there were still Blackberries, I'd be okay with like never having a phone that could do all the things my phone does. Like we would survive. We would be fine. Like I have a car. We have like if technology never advanced past that, we would be content. And because the thing is, with as humans, we adapt to whatever we have, right? Like if I live at home and I have the convenience of my mother cooking and cleaning for me, then I don't cook and clean because I'm taking advantage of the luxury of having that done for me. But when I move out, all of a sudden I have to do it on my own. Now I'm forced to do it. And now this becomes my way of life. Like I've lost that convenience, but I've adapted and I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. Well, that's how like all conveniences work in life. Like, yeah, it's nice to have the convenience of having AI, having, all the technologies we have today. But if we didn't have it, we'd be equally as happy, if not maybe sometimes happier. I think there's some evidence that we'd be happier. And so it's not, none of this stuff is necessary. So it's like, what the fuck are we doing? And what's the end game? And why are we doing it? I mean, we're doing it for profit? Are we doing it because we want to sell this technology to make money? But that doesn't seem like the motive when it comes down to AI, because it's like most of the AI technology is being used already for free. Like we're using it. I get access to it on Twitter with Grok. I got access to it on my Pixel phone with Gemini. Like I'm not paying for these services. So it's like, what is the motive? Uh, is there something much greater? Is this just transhumanism?
I I think it's about the total information awareness thing, about having if you have like real time data of everything, then you can start to make a lot of predictions and kind of plan it out in the future to really know what how to better control everything. Yeah, yeah, I think that's where it's going is basically real time total information awareness kind of stuff, which was the government's, right? But now it's cool because it's Palantir. It's in the private sector, so it's cool. Government's not doing it. It's private sector.
And
Uh,
is it even bigger than that? Is it the rich trying to live forever, right? The downloading their consciousness into a robot. Um is it almost organically happening, right? Is it that we always look for the path of least resistance, so we're always going to advance, 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 advance until we look at these human bodies that hurt and have pain and decay and have injury, and we say this is pointless, this is meaningless, like what's the point of using these ridiculous bodies? When you look at like pictures of the grays, it's kind of what we think humans are going to look like in 2000 years, 5000 years, 10,000 years, where it's like we're going to require less muscle, we're going to require we're going to use our brain for everything, so our brain's going to be bigger. Who knows? It's like we don't know what we're evolving into. I feel like when we're in it and it's happening, when you're the monkey, when you look at that, like that a popular picture of like the monkey turning into a human, when you're like the monkey in the middle, where it's you're not quite a primate, you're not quite a human, like you're in the middle. Do you know what you're turning into? Do you know what eventually you'll be, or do you not? And are we that? Are we turning into something? Are we evolving into something? And we're just not aware of it because we're in the middle of it. It's wild because it's like things become normal very quickly, and that's the scary part. Like when we decided that privacy is a thing of the past, that became normal really quickly. I remember years ago there was a documentary called Terms and Services May Apply. It was about like all the things that we just agree on. Yeah, download the software. I just got to agree to this. Yep, okay, whatever. And we're just giving up privacy. And I remember in that documentary they talked about how if somebody said, I believe it was in that documentary, they talked about how if somebody said, "Hey, I go into your mailbox and I take photocopies of all your personal stuff and I put it back in the mailbox. Don't worry, I don't keep it. I don't touch it. I don't do anything like that. You won't even know that I did it." You would be rip shit because it was kind of accepted that that was private stuff and people shouldn't have access to that. But with the internet, that's kind of how we looked at it too. It's like, oh, I don't want to put my bank account online. I don't want to give people my password. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, you know, uh, give this website, access to my personal information. I don't want to give them my birthday. I don't want to give them any of my personal information. And then little by little, it's like we accept it, we accept it, we accept it, we accept it. Where now we've accepted that like it's just Wild West online. Like any time you're online, you have given up all your privacy basically because there's third party apps taking it. There's websites that you're on, websites that you're not even on, or you were on that now have access to your information. And that privacy is a thing of the past. And it's like we've gone to the point where we're like, okay, that's kind of just the world we live in. And so it's like, what's the next step? What's the next thing that's going to seem crazy for a little bit of time before the next generation that grows up with only knowing that becomes normal to them? And that's going to happen. You know, our my kids don't know a world without social media. My kids don't know a world without, um, OK Google and Hey Siri and all these phones that listen to you and are paying attention. So that's to them is normal. They're not going to feel like they're giving anything up because that's all they've known. You know, that's the
Right.
to them. You know, so um, yeah, it's scary. It's scary to because we are the generation that watched the analog world turn into the digital world, so we can reflect on it. But there's people who only know the digital world. They're not going to know, what life was before that. And like I said, if you don't know what you're giving up, you're just going to keep giving it up.
Yeah, I am cautious about that. And that was going to be one of my kind of wrap up questions with you is that you've been able to interview all these different people and kind of many different aspects of life and everything. What do you see for the future, and what do you see um, for people moving forward, staying as free as possible? How do you think that happens?
Ooh, I don't know, man. I feel like society is playing a choose your own adventure game. You know, like I think I remember reading books growing up, right? There was books like that, right? Am I misremembering that? Where you could say like, uh, you get to a page and you're like, well, it's kind of like choose your own adventure on Netflix, where you choose the outcome by choosing the decisions that the character makes. There's books like that growing up, and I remember reading them where it's like, okay, if you want to do this, go to this page. If you want to do that, go to that page. Well, I feel like society's doing that. Like we could either choose something, make a decision that will lead to our demise, or we could choose something that leads to us being enlightened and understanding that, like, hey, we've gone too far. We still, like you were saying, you're a social creature. As much as you enjoy being by yourself, you understand that to be at your best, you still require some interactions with others. I'm the exact same way. I'm the most outgoing loner you'll ever meet. Like I love being alone. I love my alone time. I mean, I go to the gym. I just want to work out and be left alone. But and then I get in a good conversation with somebody and I'm like, oh, I like this too. This is good too. I enjoy having this conversation. I enjoy connecting with others. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know where we're going. I hope that we realize that like AI music sucks. AI thumbnail AI thumbnails suck. Like it always looks fake. There's a human aspect that's missing, and we can't be tricked into believing it's there. Um, and eventually we're like, yeah, we went too far. Like we're not happy. Like this world of living. I mean, social media was a perfect example of that, where like, hey, I don't have a lot of friends, but if I go on Facebook, I can make friends in seconds, and I can have all these friends, and it'll make up for like the lack of social life I have, and I never have to leave the house. And then what happens to all those people? They're super lonely. And they realize it didn't fulfill anything. And some of the people who spend the most time on social media being social are some of the loneliest people. And some of the people who don't even have social media, who just have friends from work and hang out with their family, are some of the happiest people. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it can go either way. And I think that's kind of what makes it fun and exciting, but also super scary, that we might actually live to see some of this. We might live long enough to see which path we've decided to go down, right? I think we're going to live like I don't think by the time we're done and our lives are over that we're going to have any doubt like which path we're going to go down. Like I think by the time we're like 80, either went way too far down the wrong path, or we see a light at the end of the tunnel and we realize that like, hey, we're the pendulum swinging in the other direction, and people are wanting the organic, natural life of just being around real humans and enjoying the imperfections that are in music and imperfections that are in art and the imperfections that are that we find in hanging out with others. And that's why we like podcasters who don't sound too robotic because they sound human. That's why we like cars that make noises because Teslas are soulless and electric cars are soulless and they don't feel human. We can't relate to them. That's why we still like mechanical watches because digital watches seem soulless and we can't relate to it because we're mechanical. We have parts, we break, we have imperfections, and I think we can relate to that. And yeah, we'll see. But I do think that, probably sooner rather than later, we're gonna go far down a road, and I'm not sure which one it is, but I'm hoping we see that, that we we went too far, and the path that we're going is gonna lead to something that's full of unhappiness, depression, and really just a bunch of unfulfilled people who are lost, and that we're much happier if we just realize that, like, hey, all the imperfections that we're trying to fix or trying to get away from, that's actually what makes life worth living and makes things enjoyable.
Yeah, I I am for Team Human. I want to stay human as long as possible. I really don't, I'm very skeptical about the whole AI thing and the transhumanism thing and the path that we are going down. But, how are we going to go in a different direction? I think people have to be offering it an alternative. And is it going to be something that manifests in our lifetime? I'm not sure. I really like the the Greek quote that wise men plant seeds, plant trees whose shade they may never rest under. And we didn't get to where we are overnight, and it's not going to change overnight. So I think it's going to be a long term thing. But I think, like we've been talking about, like finding the connection with other like minded people and focus on building alternatives, towards the future that we want to see. That's all we can do.
I love that quote. I That's awesome. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's attributed to anyone in particular, but uh, I remember running across it and it really resonated with me, so I've held on to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need credit for what we do. We don't need even to enjoy the fruits of our labor, right? We can just find pleasure in knowing that we're doing something that's positive and hopefully will create a positive ripple in the world.
Yeah, I recently was talking to, we have a local group of guys that we get together on Wednesdays around where I'm at. And my buddy's dad was talking to me about people are granted gifts. They're very Christian. They were talking about the Bible, and it's kind of he was talking about how it's a shame when somebody squanders their gifts. Like, you were given all these gifts when you came into this world, and you've just squandered them, And that really hit me when he talked about that. And yeah, I think we're all a lot more powerful than we think, and we have the ability to make a real big to make an impact, even though you might not think that you're making any kind of impact whatsoever. But these people that I listen to influence me to get and start getting into action myself. Like, I may have never got involved with any of the stuff that I've done if it weren't for the people that I was listening to and the ideas they were talking about. So you never know who you're going to influence and set down a better path that, you know, they might find their gifts and share that with the world.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I always say it like the most influential people were influenced by lesser influenced, lesser known people, right? So those lesser known people indirectly had a huge influence on the world, but they might have at the time felt like they didn't, but they might have influenced people who did have, become household names and did have a bigger impact. But they were all necessary. Everybody was necessary to help spark the change and spark, the information or conversation to expand and grow. So, you look at any really well-known person who's very influential, ask them who influenced them, they're lesser known people. And those lesser known people probably felt like, hey, what did I do? Like I'm not a huge influence. And it's like he didn't know or she didn't know that they were going to influence somebody who was going to become a bigger influence. So without a doubt, I mean, every conversation, every podcast, every person who's having a conversation with someone in your personal life or online can spread some positive energy and have an impact. And like you said, you never know how much of an impact or how what that impact's going to grow into.
Absolutely. Well, Ricky, I really appreciate you said you had about an hour. I think I brought you way over that, but but man, it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you and get to know more about you and everything. Ricky, where can people follow you and support you and get all your stuff?
You can find everything at the ripple effect podcast.com, or you can go to rickyvarandas.com or ricardovarandas.com. I actually bought all three URLs and they all bring you to the same website. So the ripple effect podcast.com, you can find links to our YouTube channel, our clips channel, our band video channel, Minds, BitChute, Rumble, Rockfin, I think is still up and running, even though I think they're that's a sinking chip. And then also all the audio platforms. You can find it on Podcast Addict, Spotify, um, iTunes, just about everywhere. And then I'm also on a bunch of social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then we have a Telegram group chat. I'm on TikTok. Which sounds funny to say, but it's a media that people are using, and a lot of young people are finding information on there. I don't know how, because the censorship there seems to be worse than just about everywhere else. It's crazy. But videos that are not flagged or striked at all on YouTube are getting immediately flagged and banned on TikTok. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, people are just finding creative ways to get around the censorship, or they're just specific topics that they're much tougher on than others. But yeah, you can find all this there, and anywhere you watch or listen to the Ripple Effect podcast. Typically, in the show description, you'll find all these links and much more. So, yeah, thanks, Greg, for having me on. It was an amazing conversation. My wife is used to me saying, "Hey, the interview is going to be an hour," and then 2 hours later, showing up. So she's she's used to it, for better or worse. And yeah, hopefully we talk again in the near future. Send me
Yeah, dude.
links to the show once it's available, and I'll make sure to share it on the socials.
Yeah, well, I will do. And man, really grateful to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time, Ricky, to talk to me. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
All right.